Okay, so this is a visual representation of what talking to an API looks like. Now, I like to use the term talking to an API, but if we're trying to get data back from an API, when I say talking to an API, what I really mean is we are sending a GET request to an API, and then we're getting some form of response. So if everything works, we're over here, we're building our website, maybe we're building a weather app, for example, or a YouTube clone. So this will be our application. What we do is we can send a request to the API to get data. So this is our website, our application, also known as the client. And what we're doing is we're sending a request to some sort of data source or server, okay? Maybe we're hitting the Bitcoin API. There's lots of them, but a particular Bitcoin API, some sort of endpoint. So if everything works correctly, if you have a good internet connection, you don't make any typos, and the API is working and operational, what will happen is you will send a request to the API to get data, and the API will send the data back. So we're almost ready now to start writing up some actual code to talk to an API. So as I say, we are the application or the client. We're sending a request to get data back from an API or server, and if everything works, it'll send back the data. Key points to note: when we send a request to an API and we're trying to get data, this is known as a GET request, and most APIs now will respond with a format known as JSON. Okay, so remember, an API, we know it stands for Application Programming Interface. It's really just a server somewhere on a computer over the internet, and you can get data back. You can get the latest price for Bitcoin. You can find out if it's raining in Vancouver. What are the weather conditions like in Florida or Sydney, Australia, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so hopefully now over the last few tutorials you understand what asynchronous versus synchronous programming is. You understand that an API is basically a server out there where we can get back data. Okay, so this is just a quick overview of that. We'll start writing some code now in a couple of tutorials, but just want you to conceptually understand an API is basically something you can talk to get data back, but you obviously have to write the code to talk to an API. So that is what we'll be covering now over the next few tutorials.